$10 million they were asking on a facility that was how many net rentable square feet?
It was like
10,000 square feet. 10,000 square foot facility, and they were asking $10 million.
She's come down on that price.
Hey, we better run. We gotta run at it. An empty unit not generating revenue is not something I'm gonna pay for. Dan, you want to spend any time on this deal? I am far less concerned with the seller's asking price. We'll buy on pro forma. We're not gonna pay for pro forma. Dan Wentzel, we are back. It's good to. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute. I know life has taken you by storm over the last several months. So, dude, let's dive right into the give us a quick 1 or 2 minute update since the last episode. And again, you and I have taken a little bit of a pause as you've gone through some adjustments and changes. Talk to us, man. How are things on your end? Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I guess last time we spoke, I have the baby. The baby's doing well.
That's a good thing.
Baby's doing great, and storage has been going well too. I've gotten back on track with things and built some great momentum right now. I've started actually working more closely with a couple of the Storage Wins community members on sourcing deals together and working through some deals together. And honestly, we feel like we're close to having 2 under contract together.
Woo!
So
love it, man.
That's been going really well.
Let me pause before, because I see the smile on your face, and let me pause before we keep going here. How did that come to be? You collaborating, joint venturing with, by the way, not just one Storage Winner, not 2, but 3 other Storage Wins members, right? So it's 4 of you that are just now working together, collaborating, making 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 44 in this case. Yeah. My math is right. Right. So how did this all come to be, man? Let's dive into it, because I think it's important for those listening and watching how we don't have to be all things to all parts of the deal in self-storage. We can multiply our efforts through others by focusing on what you're really, really good at and what you bring to the table. So now you're in a little bit of a unique situation in that I have the confidence in you that you don't need to joint venture. You get to joint venture. You get to collaborate with others if you so decide to, if you choose to. But how did this all come to be, man?
So a lot of there are some members who have been very active in the community, and we've all been looking for our first deal, and I think we complement each other really well, bringing different pieces to the table with different backgrounds and geographically different areas. We can go visit facilities. We can cover a pretty big ground across the US because we're all in different locations. And we decided we would just start looking at some deals. A couple of them have been working together, and I reached out to see what they were doing, and just they decided to have me join them for a deal to see how things would go, and we just kind of started rolling, and so we've kept it going. Yeah.
I love it. And so now you guys are knocking on the door of, you're expecting to get 2 facilities under contract?
Yes. So one of them, we have the purchase agreement in the hands of the seller, and they are adamant about a couple things on it. So we're just working those details out. And the other one is a wholesale deal from a wholesaler, and we have a meeting with him actually right after this call to go through that. So
beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Yeah.
By the way, I think it's important. Dan, do you want to just mention, because when I heard that you guys were combining efforts, the 5 of us got on a call. Do you remember that? And I shared with you some things from my experience and from the past. And I love to see, and there's so many other collaborations happening inside the Storage Wins community. I love seeing good people work together, complement each other, multiply and amplify their efforts. And I love to see everybody ascending. And that's not to say that there aren't some caution signs that you need to be aware of, regardless of who you partner with. And this could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be your best friend, it could be you're partnering with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. It doesn't matter who it is. There are certain things, I's you want to dot, T's you want to cross. In some cases, difficult and awkward conversations that need to be had in order to make sure that, number one, A, you preserve the relationship. Number two, that it actually is a good partnership. And I'm a big believer and advocate of partnering on a deal by deal basis. Don't just get down on one knee and get married and start an actual business together. There's significantly more business partnerships that fail than the ones that succeed. For all intents and purposes, it's a business marriage. And some might say it's even a more complicated one. I don't know that I would agree, but that's a whole separate conversation. Can you just highlight maybe some of what you took away from that group call that we had, where I was just sharing with you guys, hey, these are some things, these are some conversations to have, these are some things to look out for, because I want to make sure that everybody remains tight, and I want to make sure that if you're going to work together, that it makes sense and that you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
Yeah, that was a really helpful conversation, not just to toot your horn, but for all of us to have that same mindset going into it on a deal by deal basis, and not just a blanket statement, let's all start working together for everything for the rest of our storage careers, so that we all have the right mindset going into it. Because like you said, if it doesn't work out, we still want to hopefully have a cordial relationship and understand where one another's coming from. And so that was super helpful to approach it that way and to have that conversation. Yeah. I'm not sure each of us or all of us would feel as comfortable with it without having talked through that.
Yeah.
I feel like it would have been an elephant in the room that's always in the back of your mind, and nobody really wants to address it, but it's something that I'm grateful for that we did that. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you and everybody else being so receptive to it. Because I remember going into that conversation, like, man, I don't want to be the wet blanket. Like I felt the energy and excitement of working together. And you guys all do. I know you, I happen to know you all pretty well because I've had the benefit of coaching you and working with you. And I think you guys complement each other really well. And if my daughters were partnering up, if I would have the same conversation. And so I wanted to put that out on Front Street, because a mentor told me years ago, Dan, and this stuck with me. I think I may have shared this on the call, that when you are, you know how we determine the exit on a storage deal before we buy, right? Like, how are we going to refinance? How are we going to get out of this thing? Is it going to be a refinance? Is it going to be, are we going to sell? What's the plan in 3, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever term you have, if you're getting a loan? Just like we determine the exit before we enter a deal, you have to be willing, able, and comfortable to have the uncomfortable conversation before you enter a relationship. And then you will avoid having the really, really difficult, painful, challenging, and uncomfortable conversation when you have realized and decided it's time to exit. So hopefully that's helpful for anybody listening, because I see so many first-time storage investors come into the business with a lot of excitement, energy, kind of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, to steal like that old adage. And oftentimes I see people wanting to partner for the wrong reasons. It's like, well, hey, we're friends, we like each other. Like, you're out there doing storage, I'm out there doing storage. Like, why don't we just combine our efforts? Like, I see you smiling and nodding your head because that's super common. It's like, well, hey, we're kind of going after the same thing. We're in the same community. Like, let's just start a business. That's a caution flag. That's a big red flag, actually. That is not a reason to start a business together. Okay, you can explore partnering on deals, but so anyway, that is not the purpose of this podcast, but I think it's a relevant conversation to have, and maybe something we can get a little bit deeper into as you all continue to work together, grow, progress, take down deals, and win all the way around. So I jumped in because I thought I wanted to quickly cover this, but I feel like you were going to share a few other updates, wins, lessons learned. What else do you have for us?
Yeah, I got some other irons in the fire. And one is a deal that I shared on the Storage Runs community that we went through as a group, and it was a relationship I built with a seller, and then the seller went to a broker, and now I've been in contact with the broker. About a little time has gone by, a few weeks, and I reached out to the broker again yesterday, and we ended up having a 40-minute conversation, and he actually broke out his spreadsheet because I asked him, I said, I would love to see your spreadsheet to see how you're coming up with the numbers you are, because I want to make a deal work here. And he willingly emailed it to me, and we went through it. So he told me he shared more information with me about this deal than anybody else he's spoken with. And
wow.
And it seems like he's really pushing to try to make it work for me and for the seller. And he opened up about the seller's motivations and where he really thinks this can land, and how he's shaping the mindset of the seller to try to look at this to get what she wants out of it, and understanding she's going to have to make sacrifices in different terms or price. So that one's going well. And then another one I think we're going to talk about today that I'm trying to tailor the offer to meet the seller's ask.
Okay, perfect. You just said something that I want to unpack and dig into a little bit, and you may or may not know what direction I'm going to go in there. But I want to quickly highlight something on the first deal that you mentioned. A broker's responsibility and their fiduciary duty is to the seller, right? The seller hires him, and the good broker understands the relationships on both sides of the table and acts as the connective tissue to get a deal done, hopefully acting in the best interest of the seller. Their job is to get the seller the best deal possible, not necessarily just the most amount of money, but a ready, willing, and able buyer that can get it over the finish line. Because just how a private lender is first concerned about getting a return of their capital before they're getting a return on their capital, I would also say that a storage broker's primary goal is to make sure the deal can close. Why? Because a storage broker is only going to get paid when the storage deal closes. And these storage brokers put a lot of time, energy, and effort, money in many cases, marketing and conversations with tire kickers and buyers. And so their job is to be the bridge, the connective tissue. It sounds like, and I don't know this broker and I haven't been a part of those conversations, but it sounds like you've done such a good job building a relationship with the broker. And maybe there's some salesmanship involved. There's probably a combination, but it sounds like the broker has really, they're not sitting across the table from you, but they're sitting side by side, and you guys are working in unison as a partnership to get this deal over the finish line with the seller, is what I'm hearing anyway. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. He's the broker I'd say I have the best relationship with, and I've worked with him on some other deals that didn't pan out. And so yeah, it does feel like he's opened up a lot to try to make this happen for the seller.
In a minute or two before we talk about this, the second deal that you mentioned, is there any advice, feedback, or insight you can share with those that are tuning into this conversation about that you have learned and experienced about building meaningful relationships, not just with brokers, but just in general with anyone?
First would be that it can take time to develop them.
Yep.
And they grow little by little just from maintained contact. And those would probably be the two biggest things. I haven't built that kind of relationship with many brokers really at all, even though the intention's to have, perfect relationships like abundantly with brokers and with potential investors. And, that's something I could work on, but I think that's probably the biggest takeaway is they take time to develop, and it's worth focusing on them just from going through this experience.
I'll piggyback on a few things, and I'll challenge you in one area. Yes, you can have a microwave mindset about the relationship building process. There's a reason I truly believe relationship capital is the most valuable capital that you can focus your time, energy, and attention on building and raising, not financial capital, which comes and goes. But if you were going to strip me of everything I have, I'm talking obviously on the business side, I'm not talking personal here, but on the business side, if you were going to strip me of absolutely everything, could be money, could be assets, could be your network, could be your certain skills. At the top of the list of the things that I want to hold on to is my relationships. I would probably say my communication skills and my relationships, or certain skills that I've developed and relationships. At the top of that list is not assets and money and things like that. And I truly mean that, because when you have those relationships and you have certain skill sets, you can make those other things. And just because you have money or assets doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to build relationships or certain skills. So anyway, I'll say that. And then the one thing that I want to challenge you on is I think you used the word perfect. And I don't know if that was a Freudian slip or if that was the word you intended to use. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship. When you find one, you let me know. But I don't know of a perfect relationship. I don't know of very many things that are perfect outside of God and outside of like what he's done for us. Like, and outside of that, not too many things are perfect, right? Like we're all imperfect, myself included. So then a lot of great things happening, man. I love to hear all the updates. By the way, I want to make a quick mention and point out that it's so interesting. You know, when you work with somebody, you get to learn them and what drives them, what fuels them, what stumps them and holds them back. You know, a couple of weeks ago, you were kind of feeling like you were in it, and now it's just a different vibe and energy that you're coming through on this in this conversation. And I want to acknowledge that. And things don't have to be perfect for you to feel this is the big idea. The big takeaway is even when you're in the midst of it and things are falling through the cracks or you don't feel like you got a grasp on things, you can still tap into this by changing your state, by remembering why you're doing this, by leaning into gratitude. And this isn't to get all woo, but I do believe in that thinking and that approach and that mental framework. So hopefully that's useful for those that are tuning in here. But all right, let's talk about this deal, man, because I know you mentioned to me that there's one particular deal you want to focus on and you need a little bit of guidance and clarity on. So tell us about it.
Yeah, it's a facility in Arkansas, and it's a little bit non-traditional in what some of the units are, but it's 21,000 square feet, 151 units, and the owner is ready to retire. He wants to stay on to do the day-to-day for the business, but he is just ready to sell. So I've made him an offer, and he preferred a bank financed structure to cash out of the business. And so I've been working through some details with him. Some of the non-traditional things on site are there are 2 homes that have been converted to offices.
Yeah, before we get into that, you know me, man. I want to it's a business. Let's get into the numbers before we get into like a lot of the nuances, and that stuff to me is secondary. What I most want to know about is just the overview of the deal, which you started to like touch on that, the seller's situation, their motivation, because that can help shape our offer. I was reminded of something that I want to circle back to earlier in the conversation. You said you want to craft an offer to meet their ask price. Yes, and sometimes that's not possible, especially if they're not open to terms or seller financing. So that's why I always say a seller can have a certain ask price, but we're going to make an offer more in line with what the business is producing today. We'll buy on pro forma. In other words, we'll buy on the upside and the future value, but here's the distinction. We will not pay for it. There's a big difference.
Right.
I know you've heard me say that, and I think it's important that everybody hears that. We'll buy on pro forma. We're not going to pay for pro forma. So we might be able to craft an offer that meets what they're looking for, but let the numbers and the situation and the market and everything else dictate that. All right.
Yeah, it certainly won't be his asking price if he's doing bank financing.
Okay, fantastic. So, all right, you said how many square feet was this again?
21,000.
Okay, so 21,000 square feet. And what is the current revenue that the facility, well, what was 2025 revenue year to date? Or 105,000 in revenue in 25. And then so far, I mean, we're not quite at the end of the month, but do you know what they've done so far, or at least last month?
I don't have the numbers for this year.
Okay, so not a problem. Now, one thing I know about this is that there's a couple, I think you said there's a warehouse, and then there's another piece of real estate that can generate some income, but isn't currently generating income, correct? All right, so I think you were going to go there, but tell me about that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's 2 homes on site. They've been converted to offices. He rents one, and the other he uses. And then there's a shop or warehouse on site that he currently uses for another business that he is looking to get a renter for before he sells. So he's looking to line up that as an income stream as well.
And let's talk about you for a second. I know the answer to this, but let me ask so that everybody's in line. What is your primary goal and aim with this particular property? Does it fit your buy box blueprint? Okay, I'm just out of curiosity, what is it about the deal that doesn't fit what you're looking for?
Well, as the saying goes, with one of the benefits of self-storage, there's no toilets, tenants, or trash. And having 2 offices and a warehouse on site, that sounds like people to deal with on a regular basis. So this one would be a wholesale.
Okay, fair enough. I think this will be super valuable for somebody listening. When you initially put this out there as a potential wholesale deal, you almost started there's selling, and then there's the opposite of selling, which is kind of what you were doing. You were saying, like, right, you're laughing because you know it's true, right? You were like, oh, I don't want this thing because it's got a warehouse and it's got a house. And you're like, and I'm like, I remember I called you, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, that, just because that doesn't make sense for you and doesn't work for you, and those are negatives to you, those are positives to others. And not that I'm patting myself on the back, I think that's how it's going to come across, but that's not the spirit behind it. I was proven right because there's one particular gentleman in our community that was like, I love that about it. Like, I want a diversification. I don't want just storage, but I like the fact that there's a warehouse and a house. So be mindful that you want to be super transparent when you're selling something, and you want to put a spotlight on the warts the deal might have, right? Beth, and you've heard me say use this example. Beth in Yellowstone uses, like, in one of the seasons, she's like, where's the rattlesnake in the deal? I don't want the buyer to have to uncover the rattlesnake on their own. I'm going to put a spotlight on it. I'm going to be transparent about that. But I'm also going to, like, lift up the deal and make sure that they understand where the value is and where the opportunity is. So don't poo-poo your own deal too much next time, okay? Just because it doesn't work for you, for every negative, there's a way to make that a positive. And this doesn't require that much effort and energy to make a positive. It just is a positive to some people.
Yeah, I got a decent amount of positive feedback of people who would.
Yeah, man. That's the big lesson, is that just because it doesn't fit your buy box, it will absolutely and most certainly fit somebody else's buy box. And to further drive home this point, 2 homes and a warehouse. If we were being conservative, and he was able to rent those today, which I understand they're not currently rented, but he's working on that. Conservatively speaking, how much additional annual revenue would those 3 properties, the 2 homes and the warehouse, how much additional annual revenue would those generate, conservatively speaking?
His estimate, which I haven't done any market research on that, what they could bring in, but was that they could bring in additional $35,000 for the shop and $12,000 for the one office that's not rented.
Dude, that's massive. That's massive. That's a lot. That's a lot of revenue. That's a lot. I mean, that's basically
50%.
I mean, it
almost.
Yeah, it's a good percentage. It's more than a third of their current revenue today, or about a third of their current revenue today, give or take. Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to make mention of that because I know that you understand the fact that you want to wholesale it. You want to make sure that you're able to get this under contract at a price where you're able to make your wholesale fee. And none of this, by the way, should be construed for you, Dan, or for anybody listening. None of this should be construed as financial or legal advice. As always, consult with the professionals. There's a disclaimer. You may or may not be operating in a state in which you can wholesale. There's disclosures and all that good stuff. So make sure that you consult with the pros, dot your I's and cross your T's. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, you want to make sure there's meat on the bone. And I don't know if it's a cash flow play, if it's an equity upside play, maybe it's a hybrid, but what is the seller asking for this property?
He was asking 1.2 million.
He's asking 1.2.
My initial.
And what was your initial?
900.
That was your initial offer? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you since revised that offer?
With bank financing. I haven't gotten back to him with an updated offer. That was reaching out to the community and getting some advice on it since it didn't have those additional income streams in place. I wasn't quite sure how to value it.
Okay.
With the potential.
Let me address that. It's so important. Remember what I said like 5-10 minutes ago about pro forma? We will buy on pro forma. We're not going to pay for pro forma.
Right.
So I'm not telling you to completely eliminate and discount the fact that it's got these 3 pieces of real estate that can generate revenue, but I don't want you to pay for that because it's not currently generating revenue. Okay. So I almost want you to treat that like an icing on the cake. Now, if in the process of doing due diligence, you get a feel, you put your finger in the water, so to speak, and you gauge the temperature and you see that there's demand for this warehouse and, you talk to an agent and, hey, filling these houses, renting them could be pretty easy. You might want to account for a conservative number of what that could be. And and then that's going to be a selling point when you go to wholesale this thing. But in terms of the offer you're going to make, I don't want you to bank on that revenue that is non-existent right now. You follow me there?
Yeah. The piece that gave me question was that he's planning. In my last conversation with him, he said he has somebody in the works who he's talking with to have in place in the shop on a 3-year contract lease before he sells. And so that was where I was like, okay, if he has that in place, do I factor that in then in the value? Because that's $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
Substantial.
Well, but there's no historical occupancy. There's no trailing 12, right? In other words, let's say in a hypothetical scenario, he was to call you today and say, hey, I just signed the lease and somebody's moving in and they're going to be paying 35. This will now generate an additional 35,000. That's great. It's better than the situation you're in now, which is it's not currently rented. But am I going to have confidence that I have no idea who this tenant is? I don't know how. Did he just, not to be cynical, and I'm not suggesting he's doing this, but like, did he just get some Joe Blow off the street to just sign a lease to inflate the value? So I don't know how much weight and stock I am putting into the fact that a lease is now signed. Now, if we were having this conversation 6 months from now, and there's proof that, hey, this thing has been generating $3,000 a month, for now we have a trailing 6 or even a trailing 3. And by the way, when I say trailing 6, trailing 12, trailing 3, I just mean like the previous 3 months, the previous 6 months, the previous 12 months. That's what I mean by trailing. Even if I had 3 months, I would say, okay, well, this seems to be generating consistent this amount of revenue. So I want to caution you there, because treating it as if that revenue, if he was to call you today and say, hey, I got a lease in place and this guy's going to pay 35,000, and all of a sudden that 35,000 can significantly change your offer and cause it to increase your offer because now you're banking on that revenue, and then you get into the deal or someone gets into the deal and, it was, I don't want to say it was a straw tenant, but who knows? There's just no historical proof. That's what I want you to be aware of. So I would much rather you be conservative with your offer not necessarily banking on that revenue than just taking it for granted that that's going to come in.
You think he'll take that well?
Probably not, but I'm not concerned about that. That doesn't.
Yeah, just not to get emotionally attached to the deal and
at all.
close it where move on.
I wouldn't accuse him or communicate as if I think he's doing something shady. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. But I'm not going to bank.
Just to protect yourself.
I have to make an offer based on the income that I can rely on today. And the fact that you're in negotiations with him now and he doesn't have a lease in place, what's the difference if you were buying the facility and it was 50% occupied and he told you, oh, but look at what it would generate if it was 90% or 80% occupied. What's the difference? I can't eat potential. You understand? Like, so not having a tenant in one warehouse unit, while I understand that it's not quite apples to apples comparing filling up 50% or 40% or 30% of a facility, it's not apples to apples in terms of the time, energy, and effort it's going to take versus filling one tenant in a warehouse. Big picture, the idea is the same. An empty unit not generating revenue is not something I'm going to pay for. I'm going to pay for the income the asset is producing today. That's what I'm going to base the value. Now, might I bump my offer a little bit to account for some of that? Might I give them a little bit of quote unquote lift on the offer? Maybe if I liked a lot of things about the deal, but I'm certainly not going to count on that revenue that isn't proven.
Just thinking about this from a seller's standpoint, when they list the property to sell, I've never been in the position, I've sold my houses before, but I've never been in the position as houses are based on comps, but businesses are based on the income. When the seller goes to sell their business, I imagine they have to know it's based on their income and not based on the structure that's in place.
I don't know. I would like to think so, but I'm certain there's some sellers that know. I mean, I've heard some wacky asking prices. Do you remember last year at one point we were doing a deep dive underwriting on one of your deals, and it came up that you were looking at like was it an 8,000 or 9,000 or 7,000 square foot facility? Do you want to share
$10 million?
Oh, dude, you didn't even let me set it up. You killed me. Let me set it up. $10 million. They were asking on a facility that was how many net rentable square feet?
I don't. It was like 10,000.
10,000 square feet. 10,000 square foot facility, and they were asking $10 million. And
she's come down on that price.
You think really? Okay.
She came down to 9.
Oh, amazing. I mean, we better run. We got to run at it. I mean, just hysterical. And I remember telling you and kind of messing with you. We got that kind of relationship in the culture inside of our community. I'm like, Dan, you want to spend any time on this deal? Like, what is it you want to unpack here and underwrite? You want to figure out how to make this a deal? Okay, well, are they willing to take 95% off? You know, it's like,
right.
So whether they know or don't know, I've always said this. I am far less concerned with the seller's asking price. And that is not to say I am not wanting to make a deal work for them, but I'm not influenced by a seller's asking price. I'm going to let the numbers and the whole situation as a whole, as a package, I should say, shape my offer based on my goals, based on, yes, am I crafting an offer to want to meet the seller's goals and objectives? Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes the seller wants $10 million when I can really only give them, you know, I'm being tongue in cheek here, but 500 grand, let's say, or whatever. So I'm not going to be influenced by the seller's asking price. That's not to say I don't want to know what they want. Of course, I'm going to ask. I want to know where their head is at. But their net operating income, the market, the competition, the value add opportunities in the deal is going to help shape, along with my goals and what I'm looking to accomplish, is going to help shape the offer. And that's why I love the power of creative finance. Because if a seller is dead set on a certain price, many times I can meet their price as long as I can dictate what? The terms. And when I'm talking about the terms, I'm talking about the interest rate, the down payment, the length, in other words, the term. Okay, those are the things. If the seller's gonna dictate the price, I'll give you your price. Now, it's 10 million. Even with seller financing, that might be a difficult to structure on seller financing, even with 0%, no payments for the next 100 years. Okay, maybe not. Maybe for the next 100 years, 0% seller financing, that could work. But yeah, it's gotta be, it's gotta be in the world of reality. Right? If you live in a house that the comparable sales, I think I saw somewhere the average house in America is valued north of 400,000. Like that's the average value of a home in the United States. 405, 415,000 or something. If somebody's out there asking 10 million bucks for a $400,000 house, it's going to be hard for creative finance to like solve that equation. But if somebody's asking 600,000 for a $400,000 house, that's significantly higher than the value. But I can get really creative and come up with some really, really sexy, favorable terms for me to still make that deal work potentially. So that's the punchline here. Dan, this is something that I know you're in talks with the seller, and we're gonna put a bow on this conversation because I want to, in an effort to keep these a little bit more bite-sized and packed with the information that's gonna help people, and at the same time it helping you. I'd love to pick up the conversation. I know you offered $978. I think that offer needs some massaging. Okay, just based on the revenue that it's producing, I think that number, you tell me, was that number heavily influenced by this warehouse and the houses and the revenue that it could produce? Yeah, okay. Of course. That's what I thought. Yeah. And if it was generating an additional $45,000 in revenue, then I think that offer might be a lot more in line. But right now it's generating $105,000. And if I'm just going to do quick back of the napkin analysis, and let's do our storage wins 60-second deal filter, right? Where I'm taking $105,000, I'm dividing that by 12 to come up with the average monthly revenue, and that's $8,750. If I did a multiple of 80, so if I multiplied that monthly revenue by 80, that gives me an offer of $700,000. Now, as you know this because we just talked about this at length on our last Storage Wins community coaching call, the 60-second deal filter tool is meant exactly that. Do I want to spend some additional time on this? It's not meant to replace the work it takes to underwrite. But I'm getting 700 there. Okay, if it was generating 145,000, I'm curious what that number looks like, and that's now $12,083 times 80. Now I'm at 966. So I almost nailed it without knowing, by the way, to the T. You offered 978. I think that number is much more in line if this guy had a trailing 6, a trailing 12 of that additional 45 grand in revenue. Unless
yeah, it's amazing how quick that.
Unless there's some.
All the time I spent in that spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's all right, man. This is all, dude. We get sharper and we get better each day, even if it's just 1%. And look, and I'm not saying you should offer 700. We still need to go a little bit deeper, and we will on the next one. But that's why I like that 60-second tool. And then it allows us to spend a little bit more time and figure out, okay, where does it need to be? If I was going to go about it a little bit differently, I would do 105,000, and let's just assume a 60 times 60% to back out 40% operating expense ratio. Now I'm at 63,000 NOI. Okay, you offered 978, so you would be paying a 6 cap on this thing at 978. You know, right. So
I figured I had time during due diligence to let him get this guy under leased up on the shop and
but still. So all right, guys, look, we're going to put a bow on this one. You're going to want to plug in because obviously there's going to be a part 2 here where we're going to continue to unpack and help Dan on the structure, the negotiation, the offer on this deal. And so, man, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you back. Smile on your face. Sounds like you got your mojo back. You got a bunch of irons in the fire, and we're going to continue to build from here. So make sure that you're subscribed on the YouTube channel, on the Storage Wins podcast. Continue to follow along on the journey here with my man, Dan Wentzel.
Thanks, Alex.